What's up, everyone on YouTube? Today we're going to do a deep dive into 9/11. If you're familiar with 9/11, it happened 25 years ago. The official story is that these 19 hijackers, mostly from Saudi Arabia, with 2 from UAE, one from Egypt. These are the guys, according to the official story, that did 9/11. Now, we now know that John Brennan, who is Obama's CIA director, and was the number 2 guy under George Tenet, was the person responsible for issuing visas to most of these, about 13 of the 15 Saudi Arabian terrorists that we can prove. So over half of these alleged hijacking suspects that are the culprits of the perpetrators of 9/11, according to the official story, were directly tied to John Brennan, who is a corrupt, disgraced former CIA director. And we're going to show you how a couple former CIA directors link in directly to everything that happened on 9/11 and the whole background story behind this, and how it links to the Jeffrey Epstein timeline and what happened with Jeffrey Epstein and the whole Epstein story. Because Jeffrey Epstein's timeline seems to start, in 74 to 76, he worked as a private school teacher where he was laid off for some inappropriate interactions with students. And then in 76, he gets a job at Bear Stearns. And this is where things get interesting and start for him. Now, what's interesting is that Bear Stearns, at that time in 76 to 81, Bear Stearns was involved with an account known as the BCCI account, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. You see, what happened in 1976 is Carter was elected president. He was, fed up with all the public had tons of questions about the JFK and RFK and MLK assassinations. People wanted a government investigation. They wanted real answers. They didn't believe the official government accounts of those incidents, JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald, his background and everything. So in 76 is when Carter literally shuts down the CIA. He closes the CIA, puts a block on all intelligence activity, freezes up all their funding, all their money, and wants to really rehab the CIA. He wants to hire someone who's outside the CIA, not involved, to kind of come in and clean up the CIA and get things cleaned up. And someone somewhere along the line suggested George H.W. Bush as the guy to appoint. So George H.W. Bush gets appointed CIA director in 1976. And while all these CIA assets and everything are all frozen up in 76, that is when they created the BCCI. They set up this Bank of Credit and Commerce International in Pakistan to basically funnel CIA money through and be able to fund all their CIA activities in light of Carter shutting down the whole CIA and doing what he did. So they took this bank, which was actually founded in 72 and was already running a lot of these corrupt operations and doing a lot of these crazy things that the intelligence agencies knew about. And they moved in and they took on this BCCI account, and the CIA became, went underground. They formed this club called the Safari Club. And the Safari Club was led by a guy named Adnan Khashoggi, which was, ran the Safari Club, was Jeffrey Epstein's #1 top client during those years, and was basically, running covert operations for the CIA, funding all their networks and all that sort of thing through Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Afghanistan. And they were working with a lot of these groups on, they funded the Afghan rebels. They funded Osama bin Laden and his army to fight the Soviets in northern Afghanistan back then. And this is where a lot of this stuff got set up. And the Carlyle Group, again, comes into play with a lot of this. Here's Bill Nye, the science guy, and David Rubenstein, who's the CEO of the Carlyle Group. Here he is with Anthony Fauci as well. So you have to understand all the connections here and how this links into Epstein. Not everything is linked to Epstein. Yes, there are a lot of Israeli involvement in a lot of this. No, it was not all Israelis. And there's a lot of more complexity to this than a lot of, researchers out there kind of give this credit for. There's the ramp up of an incredible amount of disinformation about 9/11 on the internet currently right now. I think, what was it? Cenk Ungar recently came out about 9/11. So Cenk Ugar, or whatever his name is, from the Young Turks, he made a post where he's like, with all this Epstein stuff coming out, and then Lutnick and all this, and then he pointed out these two emails which really drew his attention, which were one about a week after 9/11. Ghislaine Maxwell makes a email to someone asking who is the real pilot, and there's a whole thing. So this is, he no longer believes the official story. It got 7.7 million views. We've been waiting for allies in the media to come around to this for a long time. It took Tucker Carlson years. He came around eventually once he realized, holy shit, this is the truth. And this is not just a conspiracy theory. It's not just nonsense. This is actual reality and the truth here. So been a work in progress trying to get this information out. We've been shadow banned, taken offline. I've had my house broken into, equipment stolen. I've had all kinds of things happen in trying to shut this down. Just found out that in 2019, right when a lot of stuff was happening, is when Ghislaine Maxwell passed through Pawtucket, Rhode Island, where I live. A really weird coincidence there. But yeah, these people are obviously involved in the cover-up of 9/11. Ghislaine Maxwell also having an email from asking her if she wants to be a member of a 9/11 shadow commission. They had another shadow 9/11 commission. Really crazy stuff. So I just, the shadow commission, and then her asking who the real pilot is, or someone emailing her asking her who the real pilot is. These emails have gotten a lot of attention in the Epstein files case. Also, forensic researchers are astounded and noting this, which has spread viral. There's a gap of 225,000 missing serial numbers that all date from the years of 1999 to 2001. So those key years that overlap with 9/11, all those Epstein files are missing from the record. You'll see all this propaganda being put out by Alex Jones and even others saying that, they've released all the files. There's really nothing important in there. It's time to move on from this, and let's not get caught up on this and dig into this. And it's like, holy shit, no, there's 3 million files still missing or redacted completely from the record. And the researchers have found out it's the key years from 1999 to 2001. So what was a guy who was so close with billionaires in New York City and all these intelligence agencies doing in those years around 9/11? That should be of absolute utmost interest to the American people and the Justice Department, everyone. We should know this. This is what they're hiding. This is like the glaring elephant in the room of what's missing from the files that have been redacted and released so far. You have to look into this big cover-up going on here with this whole Epstein case, and to find out that majority, 3 million of those files, are all those key years of Jeffrey Epstein's interactions with intelligence community people surrounding New York City and leading up to 9/11. To find that all those files are the specific files that are missing is beyond revelatory. It is absolutely an astounding revelation, and I'm glad that I've done so much work into this. 20 years of research. I started researching this in 2004 after I became hip to a lot of classified research involving quasi-crystals and metamaterials, and started going down a whole rabbit hole of, who was funding the Area 51, learned about the Carlyle Group, and a lot of this stuff linking all these connections. And we'll get into this. So the Lutnick connection is a direct connection to Jeffrey Epstein, because this was Jeffrey Epstein's next door neighbor, for Christ's sake. And Lutnick, it's crazy because Lutnick, his story doesn't make sense. And everyone, I talked about this on, Danny Jones when I went on Danny Jones 6 months ago, and it didn't get a lot of views. It got shadow banned, of course, because they shut it right down. And but I was talking about all this stuff and saying it 6 months ago, and I had Alex Jones flipping out because people were repeating it, and he's like, "There's no way Lutnick had anything to do with 9/11, and you people are crazy." But now people are like coming around. They're realizing, oh my God, there's so many files and other stuff coming out. He's lied repeatedly about his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. He said, "Oh no, I just bought the house next door from him and lived a wall away from Jeffrey Epstein for all those key years." And everyone's been posting this video. It's going viral on Twitter and other platforms today, which is
brother was on the 103rd floor. He worked for me.
Howard Lutnik, fake crime.
He worked at Cantor, and he called my sister just after the plane hit, and he told her that he said that the smoke was pouring in.
You guys hear that?
He was stuck in a corner office. There was no way out, and the smoke was coming in. And he's not good. And things are not good, and he's not going to make it. And he just wanted to say that he loved her, when he wanted to say goodbye, and tell everyone that he loved them. And then the phone went dead. So while I'm the head of the company, I'm trying to help my 700 employees who are missing their loved ones. I'm just another one of them. Just another one of them.
Normally, you would have been in your office on which floor?
105th floor. On
the 105th floor. And yet you didn't go in early that morning because of a critical decision you made.
My little boy, I have a 5-year-old, and it was his first day of kindergarten at Horace Mann. So I took him for his first day of big boy school. And because of that, I was late getting down to the office. And therefore, I wasn't in the building.
Well, researchers went through Horace Mann's records, and they found that school started at Horace Mann on September 5th. So if he's bringing his kid to his first day of school on September 11th, that's a week late. All the other kids have already been in school for a week, all his classmates. So he lies about missing work that day to bring his kid to kindergarten. Okay, this is a guy who's a billionaire who wouldn't hesitate to just hire somebody else to bring someone else to bring his son to kindergarten. Like, he never missed a day of work. His employees said he was there every single day. He never missed a day of work except for 9/11. 9/11 was the only day he missed. And now a lot of people are drawing, connections to that, saying, "Oh, that's really suspicious." Hey, he just, the dude's fake crying. He's totally faking it. He's got fake tears. You should see there's another interview that people have posted with him. There's another interview people posted with him where he complains about, Cantor Fitzgerald only got $35 million in compensation funds for 9/11. And he's like, that's only $50,000 per employee. And it's just not enough. And he actually stole the money. He never gave his employees the compensation money. And him and his sister, Edie Lutnick, who also missed work that day, they were the ones appointed by the government to set up the whole account to the Victim Compensation Fund for 9/11. The government 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund was literally, these people were put in charge of that. How much crazier does it get? And they literally made people sign gag orders in order to receive compensation money from the government. You had to sign away your right as an eyewitness to 9/11 to ever talk about it publicly ever again. So you couldn't go on my podcast and say, "Hey, I saw something suspicious," or "I saw this," and maybe you can make something of that. And I've had a number of people been reaching out to me the past week saying, they're connected to entities or people that I've named over the years in my research. They've said, like, you're the only one who's dug into these deep connections, and I have I've gotten a lot of new information that's coming out. I feel like a dam is broken. This is our Overton window for getting the truth about 9/11. You got so many people realizing that Lutnick's a total fraud, totally fake crying. He totally murdered his own brother as a sacrifice to Baal on 9/11. And he was totally involved and did not care about any of the 658 employees that he murdered that day because he quickly took all the money and kept it for himself. That they were supposed to get, stole that money. So all this has come out. He also lied about how many times he visited Epstein. He said, "Oh, I had one kind of massage in his room there, and I thought it was weird, and I just cut all ties with him and never spoke to him again." And then, like, They find the flight logs in the records, like, oh no, you brought your whole family to his island after that. That allegedly happened. So dude's totally lying. He's totally full of shit. He's totally stole all the money from these people on 9/11 and is a complete fraud. Then we have a lot of other people that missed work the days of 9/11 too. One of the key people was another financial firm called Marsh McLennan Companies, which also was in the impact zone of the South Tower. So he was in 105 in the North Tower, and this was the South Tower, which was hit first. The first plane went directly into L. Paul Bremer's secure computer room. Boom. And L. Paul Bremer also missed work the morning of 9/11. Another CEO who missed work, and we're gonna tune in now to his NBC interview the morning of 9/11. This was at 12:46 a.m. On 9/11, and this was the first time on television on 9/11 that Osama bin Laden's name was mentioned. He is the first person to literally lay out the entire official story for us before anyone knew anything. And this guy, like Howard Lutnik, missed work on 9/11 to go and go on MSNBC and give us the official story. Oh wait, I gotta share the audio. Hold on a second. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through a list of people that missed work on 9/11, and we're gonna dig into all of them because there's a lot of them, and they're all very suspicious now, looking backwards.
It's Paul Bremer. Want to make sure I'm getting your name right because I'm just meeting you just at this moment. You're a terrorism expert,
counterterrorism. I hope,
and can talk to us a little bit about who could. I mean, there are a limited number of groups who could be responsible for something of this magnitude.
Yes, this is a very well planned, very well coordinated attack, which suggests it's very well organized centrally. And there are only 3 or 4 candidates in the world, really, who could have conducted this attack.
Bin Laden comes to mind right away, Mr. Bremer.
Indeed, he certainly does. Bin Laden was involved in the first attack on the World Trade Center, which had as its intention doing exactly what happened here, which was to collapse both towers. He certainly has to be a prime suspect, but there are others in the Middle East, and there are at least 2 states, Iran and Iraq, which should at least remain on the list of potential suspects.
What kind of coordination I mean, how could something like this be put together?
Well, you'd have to have, first of all, you've got to find some people who are willing to die, which is not that easy. And then, of course, they have to find ways around what we thought was pretty good security at our airports. We haven't had a hijacking in a long time, let alone 4. So there had to have been some very good coordination there. There has to have been coordination in the whole planning of the attack. The people, if they were not Americans, had to get visas to get into the United States. They needed false identities probably to buy airplane tickets. They needed cars to get to the airport. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that had to happen here.
Go ahead.
Well, with as many resources as our government and our allies, governments around the world devote to studying terrorism and knowing what's going on and what they're planning, you have to wonder how something of this magnitude, how this could take place without any warning or any hint that it was coming.
First of all, the intelligence against terrorists is the hardest intelligence there is to gather. Basically, you have to have a spy in the terrorist group who's willing to talk to you for whatever reason. It's the hardest intelligence there is. The National Commission on Terrorism, which I chaired last year, made as our key recommendation a much more vigorous effort to try to get terrorist spies as informing on their colleagues to us. Every time there's a major terrorist attack, it is automatically, of course, an intelligence failure. That's by definition. But I'm sympathetic to the problem about how you get good intelligence on these people. It's not easy. There is an intelligence failure here. There is a massive security failure where we have 4 airplanes being hijacked in the same morning, 2 from Dulles Airport, it appears. So there's a lot of lessons that are going to have to be learned. But first, we've got to find out who did it.
Mr. Bremer, I want to speak to that for a second. When the Oklahoma City incident occurred, the immediate response from a lot of people was that it came from some Arab terrorist group. Is there any reason why we ought to be cautious about that kind of an assumption on this particular incident, on these incidents?
Well, of course. What you have to work with at this stage, since we don't have any hard intelligence apparently, and we don't have any forensic evidence, is motivations and capabilities. And so when I list 4 potential groups, I'm working mostly from motivations and proven capabilities in the past.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that you can exclude that some other kind of group could have come out of nowhere and done this, but at least as a working hypothesis in the first chaotic hours here after this attack, you have to start somewhere, and you have to start with what you know about the past and which groups have motives.
One of the things that the president said today from Florida early on was that the United States will respond to this, and he left it at that. Is it to be assumed that the first thing that we have to figure out is to identify precisely who it is we're going to respond against?
Of course, basically we have sort of a 4-stage operation here. First, we've got to hope and help that we can save as many people as possible, stabilize the situation in the Pentagon and in New York. Secondly, we need to get to work on trying to identify the perpetrators. And then thirdly, we come to the question about retaliation. And fourthly, which goes along all along at the same time, is what are the lessons we learned? What did we learn about the intelligence failure? What did we learn about the security failure? And how do we move forward in the future on those areas?
I don't recall anything like this. Pearl Harbor happened a month before I was born, and I hear my parents talk about that as a seminal event in their lives all the time. I am not aware of anything like this in the United States before. Americans are now, I think it's fair to say, really scared. Should we be?
This is a
Well,
day that will change our lives, isn't it?
It is a day that will change our lives. It's a day when the war that the terrorists declared on the United States, and after all, they did declare war on us, has been brought home to the United States in a much more dramatic way than we've seen before. So it will change our lives. I do think it's important, and I'm sure the president and his colleagues, when they start talking about this, it's important to hit some balance. The American way of life is not threatened by these people unless we threaten it ourselves. If we start throwing away the democratic freedoms and the civil liberties that are at the heart of our society, that's what they're after, and that's what we can't allow to have happen. And we've got to go about our business. People have got to move around. I was diverted on a plane this morning. I was trying to get to New York and wound up in Baltimore, and I in a way was sort of at least relieved to see business as usual going on among people. We have to go on with our lives. It's not to say we don't take it seriously. We take it very seriously, but it's not something where we can all jump in a foxhole somewhere and hope the world doesn't come and bother us. We have to find a balanced response, one that makes it absolutely clear, as the president said this morning, that we're not going to tolerate this act of war. This will have consequences for the people who did it. I hope, very severe consequences. I hope the most severe military response we can come up with.
Okay.
But we also...
So you just heard that. This is Paul Bremer, Paul Bremer. He worked for Marsh McLennan Companies on the 93rd floor of the South Tower, and his office was in the secure computer room of the World Trade Center for Marsh McLennan. Okay, he was a former. We look at his profile here. It looks like in 1989 he joined Kissinger Associates and became a strategic consulting firm where he worked there. He had joined the National Commission on Terrorism in 1999, and he was also in 1981 he was appointed executive secretary of the State Department, a special assistant to the Secretary of State, where he was in charge of the department's 24-hour crisis management and emergency response center. Okay, so he's a very interesting guy. Bremer also sat on the board of directors for Komatsu Dresser, the mining division, which patented a nanothermite demolition charge device shortly after 9/11. Likely were working on prototypes of that before 9/11. Another interesting connection. He also worked for, he sat on the board of Akzo Nobel, which makes a paint-on fireproofer for buildings called Interchar. And if we look into the whole timeline of 9/11, there's a lot of fireproofing upgrades that happened on all those key floors that Lutnick and Bremer worked on in the World Trade Center from 1998 until leading up to 9/11. So these were removed and then fireproofer was sprayed on. So he worked for a company that made nanothermite and a company that made spray-on fireproofing for skyscrapers when there was all these upgrades in the buildings going on. So that also needs to be investigated. There was a major renovation in the World Trade Center by Ace Elevator Company. We're going to get into all that in the thing. People want to know the names of the other CEOs that missed work that day besides Paul Bremer. Let's get into some of them. Okay, so we know about Paul Bremer and who he was. Looked into his whole background. He's got a lot of interesting connections. His boss at MMC companies, at Marsh McLennan companies, was a guy named Jeffrey Greenberg. Okay, and Jeffrey Greenberg is a very interesting guy. He's an American lawyer and a business executive. Served on again, another CEO that missed work the day of 9/11, didn't show up that day. No explanation why. But what's really interesting is that his father, Maurice Greenberg, okay, at the time was the CEO of AIG, the insurance company that failed and had to be bailed out in those bailouts and everything. And AIG was also the insurance company that insured most of the tenants in the World Trade Center, including Larry Silverstein's insurance policy. That, you know, these people ramped up their insurance policies on all this stuff. And AIG were the guys who ran the insurance policies. Now, AIG was convicted in 2009 of running a reinsurance scams. Okay, they had to plead out and pay out a whole bunch of money, but AIG ran these reinsurance scams, and a bunch of their executives were arrested and charged in 2009 for, you know, running these reinsurance scams, where they basically took securities and insurance policies that were risky, like the ones of the World Trade Center, and they resold those policies to other insurance companies. Very, very, you know, clever move if you don't want to take a hit for, you know, you want to insure all these people, your companies in the World Trade Center, but you don't want to take any financial hit. Very interesting tactic that they used. Now, AIG, you know, that's, again, Maurice Greenberg, who is Jeffrey Greenberg's father. Jeffrey Greenberg worked at Marsh McLennan with Paul Bremer. They all miraculously survived the World Trade Center attacks. There was also a guy named Craig Stapleton of Washington Group International who worked in the World Trade Centers on 9/11. And he used to run the Texas Rangers deal with George W. Bush. He bought into that whole the sports team and everything. Again, that's been taken off of his Wikipedia page, so people can't make those connections anymore. They've literally edited and censored out the information. But, you know, again, a direct guy connected to George Bush and the whole Bush thing. And then, you know, when we're talking about this whole thing unfolding during these years, 1976, when Jeffrey Epstein gets his start at Bear Stearns, likely on the BCCI case, where CCI is set up with the CIA to become this financing bank for their covert operations networks in lieu of Carter shutting down the CIA for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which was reinvestigating the crimes of the last 2 decades that this small group of deep state operatives conducted, like murdering the president and other heinous crimes. So these people set up this BCCI network. They also, during 1976, is when Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney got directly involved with the continuity of government program, right? So there's this continuity of government program, and they're set up to basically, what if the White House and the Pentagon and the president and the vice president are all killed and blown up with atomic weapons? Who's going to, step in and run the government in lieu of, these crazy crises and in lieu of all this stuff? So they basically have these continuity government programs, sets up these government think tanks to dream up all these crazy scenarios for what could happen in the United States and how to plan for, all these coordinated crazy attacks from Russia and China. And, they have this small group of people, which included, coincidentally, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. They sat on this group. So that group is, they're literally, their job all day was to meet with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all these geniuses and experts and think up all these crazy scenarios, disaster scenario planning think tanks. It's what they ran. They ran a whole bunch of these disaster scenario planning think tanks. These think tanks, their job was to dream up 9/11. Their job was to come up with 9/11. You know, that was literally their job, is to come up with a plot just like 9/11, and that would overthrow the whole government and be able to protect against, you know, those kinds of plots. Now, moving along, that's in the 60s and 70s. That's back in the 70s now. Then through the 80s, you know, a lot of these people are changing hands in power, and the BCCI, of course, goes down. The 1980s, this whole drug scandal erupts, where we find out that, you know, the CIA was using the Iran Contras to, you know, using like proxies through Iran and through Nicaragua to basically sell drugs, bring cocaine into the United States, sell the cocaine, and then use the cocaine money to buy weapons and computers for the CIA to fight all these secret wars. And it's pretty nuts. So Director John Deutch was CIA director during that time period, was the guy confronted in California by Mike Rupert. I don't know if you guys remember when Mike Rupert confronts CIA director Deutch, right? You guys ever seen this? When the police officer, CIA. Well, this is important because this links all this this same network to a lot of these crimes. So I want to talk.
That's Congresswoman Juanita Millender McDonald of Compton.
I will be coming back over.
I am a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, and I work South Central Los Angeles. And I will tell you, Director Deutch, emphatically and
Can
without
you speak
equivocation.
further into the mic, sir? These mics don't seem to be.
I will tell you, Director Deutch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
All right. Obviously, that is an answer for a lot of you. Now, can you please?
I refer.
All right,
That's
now
CIA
can you
Director
please-
John Deutch right
I
there
refer direct.
on the left.
Wait a minute.
Yes,
Wait a minute.
very important. During the 1980s, the CIA was smuggling drugs. They'd fly them up from Colombia with the Medellin cartel, working hand in hand with Barry Seal was working with Pablo Escobar, flying plane loads of cocaine, dropping them in the Louisiana swamp, and then continuing on up to Arkansas to a little airport in Mena, Arkansas. The whole operation was being overseen by then Governor Bill Clinton. Okay, that's how Bill Clinton became president out of nowhere. He just come from this governor of Arkansas to become president of the United States. In case you're all wondering how that guy became president and where it all started, it started with Bill Clinton and covering for the Mena CIA operation, which is covered in many books, including Compromised by Terry Reid or Dark Alliance by Gary Webb. You can read all about this. And then, you know, he gets to confront this. And then the CIA director, Deutch, responds. This is his response.
Congressman Julian Dixon.
If you have information about CIA illegal activity in drugs, you should immediately bring that information to wherever you want, but let me suggest 3 places. The Los Angeles Police Department.
Gotcha.
Please.
I'm
sorry. Others want to hear this answer. I am sorry. Others want to hear this answer.
It is your choice, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Inspector General, or office of one of your Congress persons from this. years ago, sir, and I got shot at for it.
Wait a minute, sir. Wait a minute. Sir.
And
Sir, you have not gotten the mic
Look how
yet.
nervous this guy is, man. He's directly involved in all the CIA drug trafficking, and he's literally telling this whole room full of people to bring their evidence to like the police department. Yeah, that's Michael Rupert from the Wilderness. He wrote one of the best books on 9/11. Was one of the damn good 9/11 researchers. Connected all these dots 20 years before half anyone in the media ever could, and it's just hilarious. I'm surprised he lived through that meeting. Like, I'm surprised that room didn't just get up and beat the fuck out of him. And like, I was really shocked that they didn't after that. I was surprised that people can remain so peaceful and calm in light of such insanity. But yeah, John Director Deutch quit the CIA. He resigned his position as director of the CIA immediately after this mishap press conference they tried to conduct to quell a very poor attempt to quell the rumors in South Central Los Angeles that the CIA was directly involved in the drug trafficking and the cocaine epidemic that had happened there. Yeah, that didn't go so well for them. After which, Director Deutch got another job. He went to work for MITRE Corporation. And where's the other one? Yeah, so Deutch became the director of the CIA. He left the CIA almost 2 years later and became a director at Citigroup. Okay. So that's a company that was saved in 1998 by Prince Al-Walid of Saudi Arabia in a deal brokered by the Carlyle Group. Okay. So Citigroup would later merge with Solomon Smith Barney, which was the main tenant inside World Trade Center Building 7. So direct connections there. Amazing when you try to ask AI about this, it's literally programmed to hide this information from you, say it doesn't exist. And then when you call it out and point it out to it, I've had numerous arguments with Grok on Twitter about all this stuff, trying to go into it. And yeah, another thing that happened in 79 to 91 in those years was George W. Bush, the Harkin Energy, and the Jackson Stevens Company. And this whole deal with the Saudi bin Laden group and this liaison, James R. Bath, that's this man right here. James R. Bath became this liaison between the Saudi royal family, the bin Laden family, and the bin Mahfouz family, which are the two richest families in Saudi Arabia. Basically, Saudi Arabia is not even a real country. It was a creation of British intelligence agencies back in the day. And yeah, I would love to go on Cenk's show, man. It's only a matter of time. I mean, one of like the OGs of 9/11 research, and now that 9/11, a lot of people are waking up to it. I'm just hoping I can do more streams like this and show people all these important details and connections, and try to, expose all this. I kind of jump around a lot. I haven't quite smoothed this whole story out into a coherent, smooth timeline that's easy to explain. Usually takes me like 3 or 4 hours to go through all the details and all that. Okay, so I never said that Pizzagate was bullshit. I said that the whole Pizzagate thing that they put out in the media was bullshit, and it got some guy to shoot up a ping pong pizza and go, looking for this basement door with all this fake bullshit about how it operated. That was bullshit. That was what I was calling out was bullshit. That was all the stuff that was spread by QAnon, the fake QAnon group that was basically a disinfo group set up by the Trump administration to pump disinfo on all this stuff. So yeah, there's people getting this all wrong, saying, "Oh, I was wrong about pizza," taking my comments out of context of what I said on Danny Jones about the whole Pizzagate thing. Thank you, Ludicrous, dude. I can't imagine that he would come on my show. He'd maybe have me on his show, but and it's Cenk. There's no H in it, dude. If it was Cenk, there'd be an H in it. But I'm sorry. Saudi are a tribe of Arabs. Yeah. Gangster rap, mass marketing, mind control vehicle. All right. Thank you guys. I'm glad you guys like this stuff. Just want to point out the whole connection there between the bin Laden family. There's a backdoor connection between the Bush family and the bin Laden family through this through the Carlyle Group, Harken Energy, Jackson Stevens Incorporated, and this whole apparatus. That Harken Energy would become Enron. Enron would finance the Bush administration's run for the presidency, and all their files would be destroyed in Building 7, and the investigation basically over with a lot of that stuff after 9/11. And 9/11 destroyed a lot of financial crimes and other financial things that were this Epstein group were probably involved in leading up to 9/11, and that's a good indication of what's in those missing files, that the 3 million pages of withheld and redacted documents from the Epstein files that just happened to coincide with the years that coincide with 9/11. So yeah, all that stuff is super important. Really needs to be investigated further. The oil connections, and this whole Citigroup, Citibank, Citicorp, Solomon Smith Barney connection with World Trade Center Building 7, because it turns out that Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, the two guys who sat on the disaster scenario planning think tanks for the COG program, worked on the Foreign Policy Advisory Board at Solomon Smith Barney. That was the largest tenant inside World Trade Center Building 7. So there you go. You have Donald Rumsfeld with his connections to the Rand Corporation, Gilead, Amylin Pharmaceuticals with the whole deal with sucralose, right? He helped get the FDA to approve sucralose to be used in food products for sale, even though they knew it was very poisonous and bad for people, sugar substitute. So he worked for that company. A lot of this overlap in between deregulating government basically is Donald Rumsfeld's specialty. He was the best at deregulating government. And here's Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld with Gerald Ford, the guy who helped cover up the JFK assassination for the deep state on the Warren Commission. So very key. Also, he worked for GD Searle LLC, a division of Pfizer. Very interesting, and lots of interesting connections there with the aspartame and the history of aspartame and the capture of regulatory agencies, the governments that are the mechanisms and functions within government that are supposed to regulate and oversee these types of criminal activities, and how they subverted those. So this was World Trade Center Building 7. A lot of interesting stuff going down inside there. Solomon Smith Barney being the main tenant inside that building. Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney working for them. Also working on this Armageddon plan for COG, disaster scenario planning think tanks, where their job was to literally plan for 9/11. And then Rumsfeld can be seen here in this picture on the Pentagon lawn, when he should have, had those responses in place and knew exactly how to respond to 9/11. Nobody was held accountable for the failures on 9/11 and allowing these intelligence failures and all this to happen. And this was the main guy who should have been responsible for all that. And here he is leaving his desk of duty to go out and help soldiers carry bodies of the dead people from the Pentagon. It's optics. Yes, see, I am helping. I couldn't have done this. I couldn't have been a part of this. Look at me, I'm helping. Look at me, I'm helping. Exactly. It's crap, dude. It's such crap. Oh, and finally his advisors like, you gotta like go in back in the Pentagon, and you can't do anything more out here. The emergency personnel are here. These guys are first responders. They can handle this kind of stuff. You're supposed to be doing important, Secretary of Defense work. It's 9/11. We just got attacked, a surprise attack, and you're out on the Pentagon lawn fucking doing optics to show that you're helping people. Like, we got to get back to work, dude. So Dick Cheney ran 9/11 in the basement of the White House, under this underground bunker in the White House. He basically stayed in that bunker, issued a stand down order to NORAD not to shoot the plane that was approaching the Pentagon, and allowed the Pentagon to be attacked. That plane would have been blown out of the sky, and they would have just killed the passengers on board, and not no one would have died in the Pentagon, or the damage that was done in the Pentagon wouldn't have happened. The leading expert of the FBI's leading expert was reassigned from the Bin Laden case just before 9/11. Like, he was like on to this Bin Laden things. He's like, we're going to get this guy. They're planning something big. There's a terrorist attack. They're going to target the World Trade Center. And he's writing all these reports to his superiors at the FBI, which at the time was a guy named Louis Freeh. We'll get into Freeh a little bit later, and all the things that he was involved in, and how he's now the lawyer for Bandar bin Sultan, who's the guy in the 9/11 Commission documents, those 28 redacted pages we found out. This is the guy who financed the 9/11 hijackers. So when he's talking about, how did these people get money? How did they get financing? How did they get places? Where did they get their pay? Who is the paymaster for all these 9/11 hijackers that CIA Director John Brennan brought to this country? And that was Bandar bin Sultan. And Louis Freeh, after leaving his job as director of the FBI, became Bandar's lawyer. Fucking crazy, huh? But the FBI agent who was a special agent in charge of the Bin Laden investigation at the FBI was John P. O'Neill. And Louis Freeh, when he realized that O'Neill was getting too close to this whole 9/11 plot and gaining too much intelligence on this group of operatives that the CIA was trying to set up and frame for this terrorist attack that they needed for all these overlapping reasons, he reassigned John O'Neill to a different assignment. Said, you're spending too much time on this. It's really going to your head. We're gonna put you on something else. And he quit his job out of disgust. And he said, no, I'm gonna stop this. And he gets a job at the World Trade Center as director of security. Starts his job the day of 9/11 and dies in the towers. So they set this dude up and killed him. The FBI did. I'm almost positive there's got to be more in those files with the Epstein files about this, because this is a key thing. So what happened with John O'Neill? Why did John O'Neill? He obviously quit his job at the FBI because Freeh put him off the Bin Laden case, and when he was close to coming in on this whole thing, a number of people that were involved in this and had intelligence on these terrorists, getting training in the United States, learning to fly and take off, but not how to land, and all these red flags, were put on gag order, and these programs that were tracking these people were disabled by George Tenet and Louis Freeh. Louis Freeh took John O'Neill off the case. They disabled Able Danger, and they facilitated 9/11 by removing the intelligence apparatus that was in place to stop these type of attacks. It's all there documented. They talk about this. There's been numerous key whistleblowers who've come forward with information about that. Were completely silenced and ridiculed by the media even. But yeah, these hijackers had intelligence, the hands of intelligence on them. They were renting hookers, sleeping with strippers. These prostitutes in Newton, Mass. said they slept with these two guys like the night before 9/11. They flew them up to Portland. They drove up to Portland in the rental car and left the rental car at the Portland airport with a suitcase inside it full of all the evidence related to the entire terrorist plot. It was like the CIA literally set these guys up and planted all this stuff for the FBI to find and others to find. Louis Freeh quits his job as director just before 9/11 and puts Robert Mueller in charge. And this whole thing, down the chain of command, everyone who should have been in charge that day, who should have been fired or sent to prison for their involvement in allowing this to happen, were given promotions instead down the chain of command. Everyone who helped facilitate 9/11, like NORAD Commander Ralph Eberhardt, they were all given promotions. Numerous war games were being held that day: Global Guardian, Vigilant Warrior, and Northern Vigilance. You can look up those war games. They're scenarios that were basically being run by these government agencies, which sent all our fighter jets from the East Coast to fight an imaginary Russian fleet up in, it put all these false radar blips, inserted false radar blips on the FAA radar and the tracking software. The FAA was a guy who was a Wall Street lawyer named Benedict Sliney was put in charge of the FAA days before 9/11 and quit shortly after. He failed the country so miserably. But yeah, I guarantee you there's some Epstein files about this Wall Street lawyer, Ben Sliney. He's got to be in there. Mike Canavan, not sure where he was the morning of 9/11. He was way out of place, stuck in traffic and was unavailable during the height of the attacks when he was most needed. He should have been at work at his desk, at his office. Wasn't. All these, a lot of these people were just at a meeting or missing or out of place that morning. Hugh Shelton, Richard Armitage, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, who's, again, an Iran-Contra scum extraordinaire. Brian Michael Jenkins, this guy is, I pointed out, he is very much like a, he is a very interesting guy. He's basically did propaganda. He did a lot of propaganda for the Cold War. And then right around the 80s, in the 90s, he started switching to this whole anti-terrorist propaganda. So it went from the Cold War and the Russians to the terrorists. And he helped the 93 World Trade Center bombing response and addressed the idea of an aircraft attack on the World Trade Center pre 9/11. So another thing that's interesting is this whole 1993 World Trade Center bombing investigation. There are a number of people involved in that were very interesting. Jerome Hauer, again, in charge of managing director at Kroll Associates, which is a risk management firm that did security work at the World Trade Center, also missing from work the day of 9/11, alongside his buddy Alan Reese, who's the Port Authority, New York, New Jersey guy. I'll spell that for you because I didn't put it up on the screen. But Alan Rice, there's lots of these names. I mean, this is a lot of stuff. So the Safari Club gets set up, and they formed it in '76 after Carter shuts down the CIA, and this is the club that all these people connected to this club are the people who became account holders or clients of Jeffrey Epstein. And, we have Rudy Giuliani, who sits on this BCCI. So BCCI comes up, obviously Jeffrey Epstein had to have been on the BCCI account during his time at Bear Stearns. That's where he got his start. BCCI gets all blown up in this, the government has to press charges against him. And they hire this prosecutor named Rudy Giuliani, who was a New York City prosecutor, to go after them at the time. Now, he throws the case in favor of BCCI, so the whole case collapses against BCCI, all these criminals, and the investigation, which should have gone way further and revealed all these Epstein ties and all this stuff, fails to the first time. And then Giuliani quits his job as the New York State prosecutor and joins White and Case law firm. Well, White and Case was the firm that represented BCCI. So there's a conflict of interest. It's obviously that Giuliani was bought out and swapped sides for the intelligence community and the mafia during that time. Crazy stuff. So he's good friends with this guy, Bernard Kerik, another person who was arrested and convicted of fraud and other conspiracy charges, not related to 9/11, but after 9/11. Bernard Kerik and Giuliani would later become ringleaders in the whole January 6th debacle, which I pointed out. I was showing, save these tweets that these guys are like key orchestrators of riling up this whole group and Alex Jones and all these protesters to go and storm the Capitol on January 6th. These two dudes were behind it. And Giuliani was the mayor of New York City on 9/11, and Bernard Kerik was the New York City police chief on 9/11. So both these guys were instrumental in covering up the use of explosives at the World Trade Center. The magically undamaged passport, for the fires that melted steel and took these massive buildings down, but couldn't harm a passport. And these guys said no explosives were used. Don't invest. We're not investigating this. No, we have no evidence for that at this time. It turns out that the flight school that trained the 9/11 hijackers is connected to the CIA. Deep. This guy's like a Barry Seal clone. He's probably done drug smuggling and all sorts of things. But this is the school that trains the 9/11 hijackers. This Rudy Decker's guy, very similar to Barry Seal or David Ferry or James R. Bath, these CIA pilots who are involved in all these sort of crazy covert operations through aviation. Then, of course, the whole Maurice Greenberg, we talked about that. The Blackstone Group, which Blackstone acquired the debt on 7 World Trade Center. Larry Silverstein closely connected with this whole Blackstone Group. This would become BlackRock. I mean, this is like Larry Fink and the whole people that caused the 2008 financial collapse and the housing market and all that stuff. These are engineered collapses by these masterful billionaire criminals who are all working in cahoots together in a very definite conspiracy. So the legal agreement and the court's decision and everything, Larry Silverstein winds up with $5.6 billion he made from 9/11. That's a nice paycheck to not show up to work that day, you know? So you have these 9/11 money men, the AIG connection, Jeffrey and Maurice Greenberg, and Marsh McLennan companies with L. Paul Bremer working in the World Trade Center. You know, immediately after he misses work and blames this all on bin Laden, he decides he's going to go to Iraq and become the Iraq occupation governor. So he gets put in charge by Donald Rumsfeld of the whole Iraq occupation in Iraq and becomes that. So this is a whole timeline of what happened with the merger, how Citicorp merged with Travelers Group and then merged with Solomon Smith Barney to create this merger. A lot of these people jump around a bit between these companies, and then they end up being involved with Jeffrey Epstein in one way or another, as has came out. Paul Barrett of Citigroup quit his position because of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein surfaced in those files that, luckily for us, weren't redacted. A lot of that stuff's redacted and missing. We need that evidence and information. It's not about. I'm not interested in the CP or child abuse material. I'm not interested in that stuff. That's not what's interesting in the Epstein files at all. That's what people want you to think it's about. That's what they want you to look into. But again, tons of these weird banks and institutions set up inside the World Trade Centers, a lot of weird individuals. Howard Lutnik buying the house next door to Jeffrey Epstein, buying the house from Jeffrey Epstein for $10. He bought this mansion right near Central Park on 71st Street, okay? And this is Jeffrey Epstein lives at 9 71st Street, and Howard Lutnik lives at 11 71st Street. So 9 and 11, again, this numerology stuff doesn't mean anything, but they shared a wall between the two, and Lutnik lies about his connections to Jeffrey Epstein, if he visited the island. He's caught lying about all that stuff. We saw all the videos surfacing today and going viral on the internet of people showing how he fake cried and was upset that he only got $35 million from 9/11, and was supposed to split that up between his employees. They get $50,000 each, but he kept all the money for himself. Yeah, these connections are very concerning because this house was formerly owned by Lex Wexner and was like sold through this Comet Trust. Okay, this weird trust that they set up called the Comet Trust. Interesting connection there. So this is the Comet connection that is really important with the Pizzagate scandal and all that. Gary Lutnick's brother. Gary Lutnik was Howard Lutnick's brother. Died on 9/11. Lutnick says he missed 9/11 because he had to take his son to school. People looked up the records and found out that Horace Mann started on September 5th. So he got the days wrong. He lied about why he missed work that day because he should have been bringing his son to his first day of school a week earlier than 9/11. And then NIST gets hired to write this whole report, which I don't think we're quite ready to get into all that yet. Let's get into the We talked a little bit about the fireproofing upgrades. We talked about how L. Paul Bremer worked for Marsh McLennan on the 93rd floor and of the second tower, 93rd floor here. And that how he sat on the Komatsu Dresser Mining Division board that patented nanothermite devices. And he also sat on the board for Akzo Nobel, which manufactured a fireproofing, a fireproofing, spray-on fireproof for skyscrapers called Interchar. So it's been rumored or speculated that during these fireproofing upgrades from the years 1990 to 2000 on all these key floors that coincide with the impacts and failures on 9/11, that these basically they removed the fireproofing, stripped these floors down, and loaded them up with explosives and also thermite that was spray-on over everything. There was a massive elevator modernization. This is here's the article from Elevator Magazine in March 2001, talking about how they upgraded the whole elevator system from the 1970s were in the World Trade Center. So that elevator modernization would have given the technicians who did that modernization full access to the structural core columns of the building through the elevator shafts. Ample time for demolition experts and explosives engineering people to get in there. There's been a lot of talk about who could have planted the explosives. We've seen the stuff about the Israeli art group students from the Gelatin B group that worked on those floors, but they didn't have security access to the building. They would have had to get through the electronic security systems at the building. Well, it turns out that the people who designed the electronic security system at the World Trade Center was a firm that Marvin Bush, the president's brother, sat on the board of directors for. And Bush, around that same time or shortly after, Marvin Bush's nanny got murdered at the estate. They got accidentally run over by one of his cars in the garage, and she got murdered. What she overheard or what happened there is still up for a lot of speculation. But this Securecom Stratac, this World Trade Center electronic security firm, they would have been the ones to have badging and access control to the towers, and also like metal detectors and other things. So they wouldn't have been able to get a lot of explosives in the building, even if it was the Gelatin B art students or this urban moving systems van that some people have spotted near the World Trade Center, or the van that was stopped with explosives on the Washington Bridge, or the dancing Israelis. That's peripheral to who could have actually had security access to the building. So when you look into that, you find out a lot of interesting connections with this World Trade Center security firm, Securecom Stratac. The CEO of that company didn't show up to work that day. His name was a guy, Dexter Walker, and he's a distant cousin of the Bush family through the Herbert Walker Bush line, right? Now, Wirt Walker, if you look into his whole background and stuff, Wirt has a history of managing CIA front companies. He worked for Glor Forgan, and he worked for a number of companies that just seem like they're CIA front companies, especially the one he worked for most recently on his LinkedIn page. And there's no pictures of Wirt anywhere available on the internet. There's absolutely no photographs of him. He's like Ted Shackley. He's the white ghost of the CIA. And he's running security at the World Trade Center, missed work that day, right? Marvin Bush steps down from the board of directors on the Securecom Stratac a year or two before 9/11, so to kind of distance and separate himself from what was going on there. But one of the guys that they bring on is the COO of the company. He was corporate operating officer. Is this guy named Barry W. McDaniel. And Barry W. McDaniel got his start working with BDM International Corporation under Frank Carlucci, doing a lot of black ops for the State Department and whatnot. And BDM, Braddock, Dunn, and McDonnell are right, doing a lot of really interesting stuff, but he's employed there as a munitions logistics specialist. So he does black ops munitions logistics. Was his job before he becomes the COO of this World Trade Center security company. Albert Stubblebeen, this 9/11 disinformation propagandist, one of the main proponents of this no plane theory. He offered money to Stephen Greer, allegedly, to join a disinfo op for UFOs. Former colleague of Hal Puthoff with the U.S. Army Psychological Warfare Center at Fort Meade, Maryland in 1979. The Men That Stare at Goats was literally that program. The Men Who Stare at Goats was based on was this guy's thing. But before that, he worked at BDM. And interesting connections there to the Bush administration, having a lot of these disinformation agents pushing these no plane theories. You can see these no plane theories gain tons of views and are spread by propaganda accounts, disinformation 9/11 accounts across the internet. They get tons of views, and it's all disinformation organized. It's ramping up today. You can see it out there because there's a lot of 9/11 stuff coming out. A lot of people looking into 9/11, so they ramp up this disinformation just to make all these false leads for people to go down, and all these rabbit holes that will discredit them and prevent them from looking further into these, real deep and important connections, like Barry McDaniel, who, leaves his job at the World Trade Center after loading the building with explosives and blowing it up. Barry McDaniel gets a job working for Leidos Corporation, right? Leidos Corporation was formerly SAIC. Okay, SAIC ran Project Stargate, the Montauk Project, and it's basically CIA's. If you spell SAIC backwards, it's CIA. Okay, so and this SAIC writes a majority of the NIST report into why the buildings collapsed from fire. This NIST report concluding that the buildings were not explosives and it collapsed from fire, and SAIC is this direct conflict of interest in that they're CIA scientific contractor, and the guy who is suspect number one for who could have planted explosives inside the World Trade Center on 9/11 is now a vice president there. Weird connections. And they made billions off the terahertz wave scanning people scanner technology that they sold to TSA. So all those airport scanners that you have to go through and wait in line at the airport, they're all built by Leidos. That's SAIC. That's the company that wrote the NIST report on 9/11. They made billions selling these scanners to airports. Now we know why they needed planes. Because some people say, why, if they blew up the buildings, why'd they fly the planes into them? Why do they need the planes if they could just blow up the buildings? Just blame it on terrorists. Well, now you get it. Now you understand why they needed the planes. But Flight 93, again, I go into some of the details on this stuff. It's not as important as the real suspects on this list and what they were involved in. Seems to be a number of people on Flight 77 that took off from Washington and crashed into the Pentagon, who had a lot of NSA and Air Force and Army and Navy connections. And also the wife of the Solicitor General, Barbara Olson, dies on Flight 77. And Barbara, I would love to see if Ted Olson, her husband, is in the Epstein files. Because who did he contact? He wants to get rid of his wife, and how did they get her on that plane to die on 9/11? That's an unsolved mystery of 9/11 that will probably be in those Epstein files that we can get released. As we know, there's no security footage of any of the hijackers boarding any of the flights on 9/11. The Dulles Airport security footage is the only footage of that allegedly shows these the terrorist hijackers boarding the planes on 9/11, except the timestamp on the video says September 10th. So either someone, made the mistake of not updating and putting the correct date in the software program that recorded the video, right, on the DVR that recorded this for the security system, or they did a dry test run the day before and used the footage from that to say that these guys were the ones on the planes. Then Ghislaine Maxwell writes an email 7 days after 9/11 asking who was the pilot, who was the real pilot. Well, it's clear now that Flight 77 probably wasn't flown by a human. There's lots of pilots that say, there's no way they could have done that corkscrew maneuver and flown that plane into the building with such precision and accuracy at that angle and that steep of a descent. It had to either be a military plane or it had to be controlled by a computer. And that was very easy to do because all these Boeing systems had an AWACS FTS system with a controller that you could basically upload augmented GPS waypoints to its autopilot and then disengage the cockpit controls. So it's uninterruptible autopilot that just turns on the autopilot and flies it on a series of computer programming commands. And the plane will follow all those maneuvers and crash wherever you lead it. So you look at the pictures of where the plane hit the Pentagon on 9/11, and it just doesn't make sense, because if they could get that close to the Pentagon and fly a plane into the Pentagon, they would have hit the North Wing. Any terrorist who's been planning this attack for months, like these guys apparently were, would have known that the North Wing is the target, man. You could just dive it straight down. Why do this crazy corkscrew maneuver around the whole Pentagon, leaving your whole self open to air defense, potential air defenses, to crash into the one wing of the Pentagon that was going under a $258 million refurbishment, the Pentagon renovation program, which was run by AMEC Corporation. AMEC Corporation got this contract. They were putting in bomb-proof siding and blast-resistant windows in the whole side of the Pentagon. They were spraying Linex bed liner on the inside of the concrete walls of the Pentagon to make it bomb and blast resistant, and a number of other things that they did. AMEC Corporation was run by Peter Jansen, who's a good friend of Donald Rumsfeld. And they were also immediately hired to clean up the World Trade Center site in New York City after the 9/11 attacks destroyed the buildings there. So this AMEC Corporation is definitely interesting and warrants further investigation. Is they were renovating that exact wing of the building. They had financial investigations. That was the financial accounting offices in that wing of the Pentagon, a lot of the Navy offices, naval intelligence. And because of the refurbishment, a lot of those offices were being moved around, and a lot of people weren't actually in that building. There was a lot of empty rooms and empty office spaces. So only, I think, like 200 people died in this section of office building at the Pentagon, which normally would have housed about 2,000 to 3,000 people. So they minimized who was going to be inside that building, and they did all this it was an inside job done to minimize casualties, to minimize the impact that it would have. And the number of people that it took out or would die, and so that they could use this as an excuse to rebuild the Pentagon, have it cost them another $258 to $1 million to refurbish that. AMEC got the contract for that, got even more money, and a whole bunch of files on financial records got destroyed at the Pentagon, in addition to the ones that got destroyed in World Trade Center Building 7, because the FBI ran offices out of there investigating all these financial crimes in the stock market and the World Trade Center. The El Dorado Task Force was in Building 6 and had their vault raided and half their files stolen. So there's a financial 9/11 in addition to the the attacks, the terrorist attacks, that's very interesting. And a lot of these connections, very interesting to look into. Vinyl Corporation, the Carlyle Group, they're buying out of EG&G Special Projects, which is the main contractor at Area 51, getting all that technology. The Project for the New American Century, these guys, a very interesting group of people. Jacob Rothschild involved in that. A lot of very interesting people, including Joe Biden. Joe Biden would later become president of the United States. We understand those connections and why he was cover for this. And then Barack Obama, of course, why he became president. And this is all an extension of the 9/11 cover-up, and the Epstein cover-up is an extension of the 9/11 cover-up, because all those missing 9/11 files that are the 3 million redacted withheld pages from those key years, 1999 to 2001, those are the files that we need. And that's what's missing from the Epstein files dump. There's all these fake posts saying, oh, they released all the files. No, they didn't. There's still 3 million of them missing. That's where the real meat and potatoes is. But yeah, they talk about the new Pearl Harbor and this 100-year plan that they had for America. This small group of Defense Enterprise Institute think tank people had this plan, this 100-year plan for America. They want to turn this into a surveillance state. They want to ramp up the collection of intelligence of the public. And this was their plan to do it. They needed 9/11. They got people involved that wanted to sell these airport scanners to airports. They got people involved that wanted to make money off different avenues that could make money off of it, and were willing to. And they were all compromised through Jeffrey Epstein and sex scandals and other things in order to force them to go along with a lot of this stuff. But let's go back to 1993 and the World Trade Center bombing, because the World Trade Center was bombed in 1993. A bunch of floors were destroyed. It didn't collapse the buildings, but they hired a company, this fire engineering report, to basically document everything. And the company that ran the investigation into the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and got all the blueprints for the buildings in order to do the repairs on the structure of failure and address how much damage the bomb did and why it didn't collapse the building and how big of a bomb they would need and where they would have had to plant those bombs and everything that the demolition experts would have needed to know, was accessed by this corporation, Tridata Corporation, under the contract EMW 44329 to the United States Fire Administration under FEMA, right? So Tridata Corporation, it turns out, is a subsidiary of SPC International. SPC is Systems Planning Corporation, it stands for. And Systems Planning Corporation does homeland security, intelligence and advanced concepts, advanced technology, information solutions, signatures and electronic warfare, radar physics, communication networks, Tridata, that's the Tridata Corp right on there. Tridata Corp's the one that did the 1993 World Trade Center report. So they're the ones who would have had access to all the buildings, would have known exactly how to demolish them and how to blow them up. They also have all this expertise in remote control planes and hijack planes and anti-hijack technology. They have a whole bunch of guys working on this radar physics group for anti-hijack technology, this AWACS FTS flight termination systems, that they basically have a terrorist hijack one of these Boeings with the system on board. They can lock out the cockpit controls and fly the plane from the ground. So there's no way to hijack and fly a plane anymore with these systems, and that's what they were developing. But if you're the terrorists, you can just hijack the plane, lock out the pilots, and fly the planes wherever you want, whether that's into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, or what have you. But the company that's involved in all this is this SPC International company, which again does the 1993 World Trade Center bombing report, gain access to all that. And the CEO of Systems Planning Corporation is the comptroller of the Pentagon on 9/11, a guy named Dov Zakheim. Okay, so he's third in charge at the Pentagon. He's the comptroller of the Pentagon on 9/11, the guy in charge of all the computer systems and all that stuff. And he's the guy who had a company with access to all the World Trade Center blueprints from the 93 World Trade Center bombing, and runs the radar physics group on how to remote control and fly planes in order so that they can't be, hijacked by terrorists. So 9/11 should never have happened with all these people in charge. These people were everyone that we would wanted in government to stop 9/11, but these are the guys that did it. These are the guys that did 9/11. I hate to say it. They're the ones. They need to be investigated. Kissinger and Associates. Of course, Henry Kissinger employs L. Paul Bremer, who's working in the World Trade Center, becomes the Iraq occupation governor. Henry Kissinger was selected as their first pick to head the 9/11 investigation, the original 9/11 commission. The 9/11 commission, and then Kissinger resigns after the widows started asking him about his connections to the Carlyle Group. He almost fell out of his chair, they said, when they asked him about whether he had any financial connections with the Carlyle Group, which benefited massively from 9/11. So he resigns, just like, I can't be part of this cover up, man. This is too obvious and too close to home. There's no way it's going to work. So they hire Philip Zelikow to obstruct justice and run this faulty 9/11 commission, the Keene and Hamilton commission. And of course, Hamilton, it turns out, is in the Epstein files. He's all over the list. And a chief counsel to the 9/11 commission shows that John Farmer was on the payroll for CIA back in 1977. Okay, for the House Select Committee on Assassinations. the very guy involved in the House Select Committee on Assassinations investigations, now hired as the chief counsel for the 9/11 Commission. So it's Senator Max Cleland quit the 9/11 Commission out of disgust, saying that, you know, it's an absolute scam, it's a cover up. They're pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. He went on Wolf Blitzer on CNN and ranted about that in 2003. Senator Max Cleland's a true American hero, spoke the truth, and was privy to a lot of inside stuff on the 9/11 Commission. And they lied about the foreknowledge of 9/11, whether they had advance warning. Is the April 10th, the August 15th memo, I think it's called. Bin Laden determined to strike in the U.S. that she was aware of. So they had memos, they had information that they were being told. They knew this attack was coming. I thought I had more connections here with the Barry Jennings thing in Building 7, but he's a key witness to what happened in Building 7 and what went down there. Of course, William Rodriguez's story, you know, gets brought in, and then they, once he didn't play game with their official story and some of their narratives, they kicked him to the curb and told him to get lost. But they were telling him he was going to be a senator. They were trying to, you know, he was a janitor for the World Trade Center, and they were trying to get him to go along with their story, but they couldn't. He was just a truthful guy. And you know, this 9/11 investigation is run by all the people, you know, later connected to this, you know, Brennan and Clapper. They just falsely discredited the Hunter Biden laptop story the same way. Brennan and Clapper, turned out these are the guys, you know, really tied to a lot of the NSA expansion of the control, James Clapper and the CIA's creation of the 9/11 myth with the, you know, giving the terrorists their visas and bringing them to the United States. That was John Brennan. And yeah, very interesting connections there. You know, Brennan's basically gets installed as the CIA station chief in Saudi Arabia by George Tenet. George Tenet takes over the CIA from John Deutch. When John Deutch quits the CIA, George Tenet takes over, and he's immediately involved in all this. He comes from the Saudi Arabia background and this connection, and he's the guy that, you know, when he took over in 1996 and took the reins of that agency, these are the guys that orchestrated this and set that up. And then the CIA director after 9/11, this guy Porter Goss, is connected to the group that killed Kennedy, literally the Operation 40. He was a member of Operation 40 and the group that killed JFK. So really interesting connections when you dig into all these people. Again, not all these names are going to appear in the Epstein files. So the Epstein is just one window into some of this stuff, and a very important one because we get that Lutnick connection and a lot of the other connections with BCCI and the Iran-Contra gang. The Donald Trump whole thing with him being so much in the Epstein files. Now we know there's a cover-up going on with this crazy stuff with the Enron scandal in Building 7. Buzzy Krongard being involved in A.B. Brown and their connections with Blackwater and the whole the put options stock bets that were placed on American Airlines and United Airlines stock pre 9/11. And yeah, this is X-Files predicted the Lone Gunmen episode, the pilot episode in March 2001. It aired and it almost predicted 9/11 like exactly. Really crazy, scary stuff. William Clark talking about, you know, their future plan for the Middle East. They're going to invade all these countries and take them over. It's also written in Brzezinski's book, The Grand Chessboard. That was Obama's national security advisor. So a lot of the stuff people don't get. Afghan opium trade, the Afghan and the drug connection. Okay, go watch Operation Air America. It's a video on. It's a video about. Let me find it. Operation Air America. Okay, It's about the Vietnam topics. Air America, 1990 movie. Okay, it was based on all the CIA drug trafficking in the Golden Triangle and drug trafficking. So this guy finds out about the CIA drug trafficking of they're bringing in tons of heroin, and he gets all the evidence. They say, all right, get all your evidence together, and we're going to send you to a hearing, and you're going to go and expose all this. And they switched all the evidence on his plane out with drugs. And so when he lands, he gets busted, and then he gets arrested for the drugs. And they say that he's the guy involved, and they take all his evidence in the movie. It's a really crazy thing that happens, but stuff like that really legitimately happened, including on 9/11 with, Richard Andrew Grove of Silverstein Technologies, who was told to bring all his evidence of this back door into the Fortune 500 trading platform software that he found. He was supposed to bring all that evidence to a hearing on the 93rd floor of the World Trade Center on 9/11, and he was late that morning, so he didn't make it to the meeting. But he would have died with all his evidence on the 93rd floor that day, and crazy stuff. So the Afghanistan a ton of mineral wealth, tons of opium. It produces 90% of the world's heroin comes from opium produced in Afghanistan. The Taliban had started slashing and burning the opium crop in early 2001. This was a disaster for the CIA, who rely on drug money and the big banks rely on this drug money to basically launder illicit funds and come up with their cash deficits. It's a big part of this global trade network are the drugs. And when the Taliban took control and started banning opium production, that hit these banks hard. So they obviously wanted to go in and get the opium production back online. And they needed to do that. And this guy, Wirt Dexter Walker, I got to organize these slides and go through all this stuff a little bit better. There's a book where you can go in over all the legitimate 9/11 suspects. It's called Another 19 by Kevin Ryan. I suggest people read that book if they want to dig deeper into all these connections and learn the truth about, who is really behind 9/11 and how this all went down. We, of course, know that there was a 20th hijacker that didn't board the plane or get involved, the Zacharias Moussaoui guy, who they tortured mercilessly in this enhanced interrogation program, which it turns out Luis Elizondo was a big part of for at Guantanamo Bay. Turns out that, Lou Elizondo is basically like involved in all this crazy CIA enhanced interrogation techniques at Guantanamo. He's wanted for illegal crimes in several other countries because of the work he did there. And now he's this big supposed UFO guy who goes around, doing a lot of UFO related crap. Disinformation. He came out with this group connected to Tom DeLonge that came out of John Podesta called TTSA that spread a lot of disinformation about UFOs. And he's a big time UFO disinformation agent, took over those trials that were supposed to get to the truth of UFOs and hearings in Congress. And he presented the absolute crap evidence and just made a mockery of the whole subject. Very interesting psyops and disinformation. But, Dick Cheney, of course, suspect number one for 9/11, worked in Solomon Smith Barney Foreign Policy Advisory Board in World Trade Center Building 7, and also on the COG disaster scenario planning think tanks where that's exactly where 9/11 was thought up and first planned up and dreamt up. I won't even get into all the disinformation stuff that's out there. People have seen these pictures, okay? So I show people this and I ask them, if you think that your vote matters or that you can vote your way out of the problem, then you don't understand what's really going on. Yeah, you're not going to find Dick Cheney's probably not going to be in the Epstein files. During this time period, he's working for Solomon Smith Barney and then joins the Bush administration. He's been in and out of government, been a real big government guy. He's working for, You've seen that the movie about Dick Cheney. There's a movie about him which is really good. People should check that out. It goes into some stuff, but again, not everything. But not all these guys are going to be in the Epstein files. And 9/11 is a joint oversight thing. He's hanging around with a lot of intelligence people inside New York during that time. But again, you're not going to, there's not going to, they're, and yeah, so the Bush and the children on 9/11, that's definitely, some people said, oh, why don't we get the Secret Service to go and arrest all the president, and we need their help to take down this cabal. And it's like, dude, the Secret Service has been pretty much involved with a lot of this stuff if you really look into it. I mean, Carl Truscott was in charge of the Secret Service on 9/11, and he was supposed to, if that had been a surprise attack, they wouldn't have kept George Bush in that classroom, talking on camera, talking to kids. There was obviously a optics psyop that was set up by them in a way to keep George Bush out of the loop and out of far away from Washington, in a Florida classroom, where they could conduct all this. I mean, he's basically like shown as a child here playing with paper airplanes. Knew very little of the overall plot of 9/11. They wanted to make him look as innocent as possible, and that's why he's with children. And but the FBI, the Secret Service, should have gotten him out of that classroom immediately. If this was really a surprise attack that they didn't know what it was going on or what had happened, they would have immediately. They wouldn't have gone in and whispered in his ear. They didn't want it. They wouldn't have gone, not to alarm the children. No, fuck that. They would have grabbed him up and dragged him out of that freaking room like he was a rag doll. They would not have given a fuck about, disrupting the children. The children are going to watch this shit happen on TV. They're going to be They're going to be disturbed their entire lives. Those kids who grew up in the last 20 years, like, come on, get the hell out of here. That's the most bullshit excuse ever. If it was real protocol, a real surprise attack, they would have gone right in that classroom. They wouldn't have wasted time whispering into his ear, and they would have grabbed him up and put him in a safe location and had him on board and up in the air on Air Force One within fucking minutes. Okay? Bullshit. Secret Service are in on it, dude. Just like they had the stand down guards, the agents that told the security and waved them to stand down. The main Secret Service agent in the Dealey Plaza told the security agents guarding on the back of Kennedy's limousine to back off right before the limousine got into Dealey Plaza. It's like videos of it. They testified to it. Robert Maxwell, super spy, again, involved in all these book publishing. Go to book publishing. They're controlling the media. They're controlling the books. They're controlling the scientists. They're getting their hands in all these scientist groups. He owns this publishing company, Pergamon Press, which publishes all the scientific journals. They're Pergamon Press. They're getting 40 years of service to science, technology, and education. Nah, bro. We know what the hell happened. We know what really went down. Thank you. Thank you for the super chats, my friends. Really appreciate that. I don't make money off doing this. Trust me. They get shadow banned and get my accounts deleted and blocked for sharing a lot of this information and making these connections for people and showing people the truth about how all these things connect. So also got ridiculed, man. I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, Howard Lutnik, and now look at all this, dude." Everyone's realizing that, this guy's crocodile tears and completely fake emotional, acting emotional response. These fake billion crocodile tears, man. It's hit so much different now that people know that this guy is, in fact, Jeffrey Epstein's next door neighbor. Anyways, yeah, that's a lot of connections there. I hope your head hurts, man. Well, that's what's going to be in these Epstein files. You're going to find a lot of these people connected to financial companies and financial operations in the World Trade Center. Again, you can look up Richard Andrew Grove, too. That's an interesting story. Richard Andrew Grove. He has a podcast. I don't know why it's not coming up. That's him for sure. They don't want you to find this guy or his information, man. This is like you're finding all these other people when you search for Richard Andrew Grove. You can tell that these search algorithms have been highly manipulated to hide a lot of information. Whatever happened to Indira Singh? Who's that? Why does that name sound familiar? Oh, let's talk about some other people that miss work. In addition to Craig Stapleton, there's Jim Pierce of Aon Corporation. Okay. This is Jim Pierce. Yeah. Famous people who avoided death on 9/11. Larry Silverstein. Gwyneth Paltrow. Patty Austin. Michael Jackson. Oh, yeah. He also happened to be the cousin of President George H.W. Bush. Yeah, he's married to George Bush's cousin. And he misses work the day of 9/11. So yeah, it's not just, people like trying to say this was a different kind of conspiracy that it was, don't have all the facts. They don't have all the pieces put together. And it looks like it was a very sloppily put together like event. They made a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of explosives that went off too early. There's the thermite that went off too early in the World Trade Center. Indira Singh. Let's see who this is. I don't know. Tell me more about who she is, because I don't know. I mean, well, the people are realizing there's like probably 50 to 100 names of people that knew 9/11 was coming, were informed of it, or helped piece this together. I mean, you can at least find 19 people that a list of 19 people that are as guilty as the 19 terrorists that they say did it. But what's the most incriminating thing of all? Which is that? Okay, thank you for the $5, man. Subliminal Fish and Wyatt 30. I'm going to check out the poll that we ran. 96% of people do not believe the official story. That's crazy. I'm going to close that poll. I was in East New York doing a 10-week art teaching residency during and after 9/11. Kindergarten class made a homage quilt, caring, sharing, and friendship given to a firehouse team during 9/11. That's cool, man. Those are happy, good 9/11 stories. It did bring a lot of people together after 9/11 and brought a lot of the country together. So it's been crazy, but it's so crazy now how Donald Trump's friends like Howard Lutnik and all these guys are deeply tied to Epstein and deeply tied to this 9/11 plot. And you got 9/11, you got all these scientists too. We've talked about those connections and how, and that those rabbit holes, and how he was getting access and influencing all these different people in all these different ways. And then, I wanted to point out, there's been a number of interesting information come out recently. Like we realized that, oh, this is good. I want to play this one. No, that's not the one. Damn it. Oh, this guy right here. So this is Mark Levin, right? Yeah, I'm about to get off. I'll be off soon. And this is the guy, or Harvey Levin. Sorry, Harvey Levin. He's the guy that runs TMZ. He's also the guy that gave Jeremy Corbell his own show on TMZ to spread UFO disinformation. This guy hired Jeremy Corbell and gave him his own show. And then it turns out that he's in the Epstein files and is, you know, directly connected to TMZ, put all this disinformation out, defending Jeffrey Epstein and trying to turn people off the case. And he's also behind a lot of this UFO disinformation. And as other people are finding out and coming to realize, you know, Peter Thiel and this whole Palantir thing, right, is very much connected to the CIA and also disinformation programs and Jeffrey Epstein. Peter Thiel super connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and who works for Peter Thiel is Jesse Michaels, the dude who like took over ufology in the last 2 years. Really, got super popular, and put out a $50,000 prize for the Biefeld-Brown effect, the vacuum challenge. And then totally blew us all off. Still hasn't paid out the money or come through on that. And he's now doing these shows around, across America where he makes everyone give up their cell phones. They can't bring their cell phones into the event. Very weird stuff going on with this dude, and he basically has been promoting nothing but disinformation, like pure CIA disinformation, for the past few months. And he's got Joe Rogan on here doing Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan asks him about the video, the Biefeld-Brown effect in the vacuum. Jamie brings up the video and he totally deflects and doesn't want to, like, I'd never seen him get so nervous and deflect so hard in his life. And he's putting out all this stuff. This guy, I interviewed a former senior CIA official named Rolf Moet Larsen, who claims to be a time traveler, having traveled back to the 15th century for months in the 1990s. This conversation was nothing short of this is fucking CIA pumping out disinformation hard in light of the Epstein files and just distraction ops and psyops. And this channel has been ground zero to a lot of the psyops that the Peter Thiel and the CIA have run on ufology, starting with Jake Barber and that whole psychic egg scam thing that he put out with the Skywatchers group that were supposed. Ross Coulthart was so adamant in telling me they're going to summon UFOs and you're going to be proven wrong within weeks. Just watch. I'm like, dude, it won't happen. Watch. I promise you. These guys are disinformation. They work for intelligence agencies and they're all connected to them, like literally working for them. And Ross Coulthart, no, you don't understand. These guys are legit. They actually summon UFOs. We're going to summon one. We're going to take one down and then the whole world will know. I'm like, dude, it's not going to happen. Just watch. Promise you. It's a psyop. Like, these people are psyops and they're directly working for people that are known psyops who are directly connected to Jeffrey Epstein, dude. So it's funny that, Jesse Michaels has done so much to prop up Jeremy Corbell, never called Jeremy Corbell or Bob Lazar out on any of their bullshit. And he's promoted these guys like UAP Gerb, who's totally like taken in by the Bob Lazar bullshit and has just great recall and great, ability to compile all this information to remember it all, but absolutely no like logic or discernment in like sorting out what's disinformation from what's actually real. Just kind of lumps it all together. And that's what psyops do, man. They just pile on so much disinformation and so much bullshit that you'll never get through that wall of disinfo to get that little nugget of truth that's hidden in there. If they hide it in there, it's well hidden and where it can't do any damage. But yeah, the UFO thing is just crazy that Jeffrey Epstein's super interested in UFOs, connected to UFOs, and then also funding all these people that are hiring UFO disinformation agents and giving them their own shows on like TMZ and stuff. So yeah, it's crazy, man. Dude, anyone talking about time travel has not got it right, because time travel is impossible. It doesn't work, and there would be no continuity, and the universe would not make any sense, and it wouldn't exist. So anyone talking about time travel is so far out to lunch, they've completely lost their entire brain, and should be ignored altogether. So yeah, well, that's an act. You have to act smiley and happy and cuddly and friendly. That's all CIA media tactics, because I know I'm not that person. I'm not friendly and nice and smiley all the time, and I get angry and I go on rants and I swear, and all that. I'll never be that guy. I'll never. I'm sorry. I can't sit there and like listen to Jeremy Corbell, like load bullshit after bullshit on and just stay happy and smiling. Oh my God, that's fascinating. You don't say, But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned some things. Please share this information. Recommend me to these shows. Be like, hey, you guys are getting into 9/11 and you want to get into psyops and learn some shit. You got to interview this dude. Send them my documentaries. You can go on my YouTube channel. If you go to my YouTube channel, I have a 9/11 playlist right down here, the 9/11 conspiracy mega playlist. Share that with people. Share those videos around. There's a whole bunch of great content in there if you want to really get into 9/11 and what really happened. Here, we'll just end with this. We'll go and hang out a bit, and then I'll end the stream. But I'm
Structural steel is fireproof to last between 1 and 2 hours, which it did, and then steel melts.
It began to melt the steel. That steel literally melted, and down they came.
Literally melted the steel. Steel in those buildings is designed to accept 800 degrees temperature, melts at 1500 degrees, and the jet fuel fire produced 2000 degrees.
As the steel began to soften and melt, the interior core columns began to give. It all pancaked.
Melted beams where it was molten steel.
Bright reddish orange color. Red hot.
Like the fires of hell.
Heat literally melted them together.
Molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah. Molten metal dripped down the sides of the wall.
Just a cotton picking minute.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves.
I've never run across anyone who said that they had in fact seen molten metal, or, by the way, if they had seen it, that they had performed some sort of analysis to determine what that metal was.
Let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, there's no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it. I was on the site, I was on the steel yards, so I don't know that that's so.
Project was on fire for months. We were down at the B1 level, and one of the firefighters said, I think you'd be interested in this, and they pulled off a big block of concrete, and there was like a little river of steel flowing.
Molten means flowing. I've never run across anyone who...
Nobody, there's no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it.
I'm curious about the pool of molten steel that was found in the bottom of the towers.
I am too.
And
Please tell me about it. Have you seen it?
Well, not personally, but eyewitnesses there found huge pools of molten steel beneath the towers, and some scientists don't think that the collapse of the building could have melted all that steel. And physics professor analyzed some of the steel, and Stephen Jones, and he found evidence of thermate residue, which would explain how the buildings collapsed by means of pre-planted explosives. So, have you analyzed the steel for any of those residues?
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, there's no eyewitness who said so.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry.
Yeah, like lava.
Like it was
Like
lava
lava.
from a volcano. The fires got very intense down there and actually melted beams where it was molten steel that was being dug out.
It's this fused element of steel, molten steel and concrete and all of these things all fused by the heat into one single element.
And almost like a chunk of lava from Kilauea or Iceland, where they're very sharp but breakable shards on the end here.
This 8-ton steel I-beam is 6 inches thick. It was selected to be preserved for future generations for the near-perfect horseshoe-like bend formed during the collapse.
I found it hard to believe that it actually bent because of the size of it and how there's no cracks in the iron. It bent without almost a single crack in it. It takes thousands of degrees to bend steel like this.
Typically, you'd have buckling and tearing on the tension side, but there's no buckling at all.
You saw steel, some of the thickest steel I've ever seen, bent like a pretzel. And you just couldn't imagine the force that took. But the grapplers were pulling stuff out, big sections of iron that were literally on fire on the other end. They would hit the air and burst into flames, which was pretty spooky to see.
There was even a point where you would create an air pocket by moving steel, fueling the fire on the ground, would ignite cars, and cars would just blow up. But, you know, these underground fires were just like the fires of hell.
This is how it's been since day one. Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was the core at some point, and it looked like an oven. You know, it was just roaring inside. And it was just a bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out? What was that, Chief? We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out? Yeah. It's red hot. If we hit it too much steam, you won't be able to see what he's doing. Great.
You see how this debris is still smoking? That's from the fires that are still burning. 8 weeks later, we still got fires burning. Every now and then, one of the pieces of equipment will dig in. They'll open up a small area, the oxygen will rush in, and you'll get this plume of brown, black smoke coming up. That's because that fire just got more oxygen. So, I mean, these things are burning. At one point, I think they were about 2,800 degrees.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of the wall from Building 6.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground.
And all of a sudden, he comes out of this little tunnel screaming, "Wait till you see what I found." And he pulls in ministers and officials, and there, this cross is fully extended, melted together with the intense heat. The two beams were never initially part of the same structure. Heat literally melted them together. And the piece of metal that's draped over was molten metal that had literally fallen over one of the arms.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things.
Steel-toed boots?
Steel-toed boots. Out still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. The guy's boots just melt within a few hours.
It was literally steaming. Your boots would melt in certain areas. That's how hot it was. The steel was coming out red in certain areas from the first couple of weeks at least.
Go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, there's no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it. I was on the site, I was on the steel yards, so I don't know that that's so.
There's video of it.
Melted around 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it's probably pretty difficult to get that kind of temperatures in a fire. So I don't know the basis. I can't address your question if I don't know the basis.
Well, NASA pictures, thermal images showed those sorts of temperatures in the basement.
Would you send them to me?
Okay.
My name is Mark, and I'm the individual who was questioning Dr. Gross, and he asked me to email to him those thermal images. When I approached him after his talk to get his email address for that purpose, he refused to provide it to me. I think this is important because it reveals the attitude of the NIST investigators, which is one of willful ignorance of what really happened on 9/11.
Yes, I am the king. Numero uno, baby.
Find something?
Yeah, I wound up in some government think tank's upload directory. Here's your scenarios, ladies.
These look like counterterrorism scenarios, war games developed for the Defense Department.
What's scenario 12D?
Airline terrorism? That doesn't make sense. Your father was murdered over a war game?
Download it.
Why can't you stay out of this? Leave me buried.
What is scenario 12D? We know it's a war game scenario, that it has to do with airline counterterrorism. Why is that important enough to kill for?
Because it's no longer a game.
If some terrorist group wants to act out this scenario, why target you for assassination?
Depends on who your terrorists are.
The men who conceived of it in the first place. You're saying our government plans to commit a terrorist act against a domestic airline?
There you go. Indicting the entire government as usual. It's a faction. A small faction.
For what possible gain?
The Cold War's over, John. But with no clear enemy to stockpile against, the arms market's flat. But bring down a fully loaded 727 into the middle of New York City, and you'll find a dozen tin pot dictators all over the world just clamoring to take responsibility and begging to be smart bombed.
I can't believe it. This is about increasing arms sales. When?
Tonight?
How are you going to stop them? Why didn't you tell the world this? Go to the press.
You think I'd still be drawing breath 30 minutes after I made that call? The press? Who's going to run this story?
We would.
This? It's a birdcage liner. Wild-eyed crap right up there with Elvis as an alien and two-headed babies.
You obviously read it.
Don't be so damn naive. You think this is going to save the world? I'm doing what I can, John. I don't have all the specifics on Scenario 12D, but I think I know the flight they've chosen. You stay out of it. I don't want Overlord gunning for you, too.
Atlantic National announces our final warning call for Flight 5, Washington, Boston, Oakland Airport. All passengers for Atlantic National.
You see anyone you recognize?
No, but that doesn't mean they're not around.
Okay. Let's board. Check the cabin for free hydrocarbons. Try and pinpoint that bomb.
This is your plan? I still think we should call in a bomb threat. Let the FBI deal with this.
You said yourself we don't know the full extent of this conspiracy. We can't trust any government official. Our only hope is to get on that plane.
They're boarding.
Then that's 2 problems solved. Find anything?
The luggage hole's clear if this thing can be trusted. What'd you do, make it with your erector set?
You're absolutely sure that this is the targeted flight?
This flight was chosen primarily for its visibility. It's scheduled to pass over Manhattan on its way to Boston.
You said they intend to bring us down in the middle of New York City? What if there is no bomb?
Well, how are they going to bring it down?
Same way a dead man can drive a car.
What do you mean, no bomb?
Langley, I need you to hack into the aircraft's onboard navigation system. We need to know where we're headed.
Okay, go into headsets. I'll clone the airphone's carrier. Make them think we're sending a ground-to-air fax.
That's one twisted star 69.
Well, just get ready to ride the wave, you boy.
Just get me on that plane and I'll get you autopilot access.
How are you going to do that?
Airline telemetry systems use processors similar to those found in CB radios.
I'm in. We got ourselves a convoy.
What's your progress?
I've hacked into the flight control system output.
With a little bit of help.
It's what the brains of the plane is telling the little black box.
Course heading, attitude, hold, yaw, axis, stabilization. What the heck's that?
Is that what it looks like?
I think it is what it looks like.
What does what look like?
Modem protocols. Remote access. Somebody on the ground's flying your plane.
Bogey, sir.
Keep your course. I need to know our flight plan.
I'm mapping the data now.
Liars. Your flight's gonna make an unscheduled stop in exactly 22 minutes.
Corner of Liberty and Washington. Lower Manhattan.
World Trade Center. I'm going to crash the plane into the World Trade Center.
I'll tell the flight crew.
Langley, can you override the flight control system?
I'm working on it.
What is this? My name is Bert Byers. I work for the government. I believe this plane has been commandeered.
Sir, passengers are not allowed in the cockpit. I need you to return to your seat now.
You don't have control of this plane, and I don't know if we can get it back. Turn off your autopilot. There may be a chance that we can override it.
Sir, I'll be happy to contact your superiors in the government to confirm. Sir, damn it!
He's right.
Damn it! Frozen again. They've encrypted the manual override commands.
Well, decrypt them.
I don't have enough power. My CPUs are pegged.
Langley, what's happening?
I'll try decrypting in background mode.
How long will that take?
In my calcs per sec, I estimate 7 to 10 days.
Oh. Needless to say,
our asses are fried. Where are you going?
To unfry us.
All right, try cutting electrical power. Thought of that. They've thought of everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing some technical difficulties up here. At this time, we'd like you all to return to your seats.
And kiss your asses goodbye.
Finally, we're getting close. I know.
Damn it!
New York Center, this is Atlantic National Flight 265 Heavy. We are declaring an emergency. We have 110 souls on board, 16,000 pounds of fuel, and no dangerous goods or cargo to report.
Come on, Phil Hickey. The fronts have failed, haven't they? There's still hope. Hope my next turnout's as nice as my last one.
I hate you.
You've got manual override.
If we can't get to the FBI, we'll go public. With your testimony, we can break this conspiracy wide open, bring Overlord down. The whole operation. Dad, what is it?
God, I see myself in you. The same youthful enthusiasm, idealism. I was so angry at you for so long because I didn't want you to waste your life tilting at windmills. But I see now that you've got something I never had. You're a brave man, John.
You're not going to testify. You're going to let them cover this up.
They almost killed me twice. They won't fail a third time. My silence will keep me alive. And you. I know you and your friends are fighting for the American dream. Just don't expect to win.
We want to turn now to